Hello, everyone. Welcome to running the gauntlet of Google Classroom. My name is Caitlin Roddick. I teach 8th grade science and history at Bartles Middle School in Portage, and I'm coming up on my 7th year. So what are we doing today? We are looking at, do you dread using Google Classroom? Do you want to make ways to make Google Classroom help you rather than impede you? We will be learning about the organization, posting, grading, some tips and tricks to help make Google Classroom helpful for you. Make that virtual or in-person class easier to teach with some tips and tricks. Success today, find at least one thing that you can and will be able to implement right now, today. Now, if you're watching this video, you are welcome to pause, you are welcome to rewind, you are welcome to fast forward or do whatever you would like so that you can catch any of this information or go back and get any of this information as we go. So with that, let's get going. First up, why might you make a class? You might make it for a class. Wow, I know. Big deal right there. But you might make it for a class, a student group, or after-school organization. I teach yearbook. I like to have one that I can send out information all at once. Maybe it's for a field trip that is coming up. Regardless, it's a great way to get information out in mass. Some people look at this and they're like, well, couldn't you just do like a Google website or make a website? Yes, you definitely can, 100%. A positive for Google Classroom, though, is that there is a grading piece that can integrate to Infinite Campus. You heard that right. There is also a piece that you can be assigning work to students and they're getting notifications. Also, you can be communicating with students on here. So it's a lot more integrated, where a website is kind of like, here's all the information, come and get it. Google Classroom is like sending out the information and kind of ensuring that it's getting there. It can integrate the grading piece and the messaging piece, everything all together. That's not to say you might have a classroom website that you use for your resources, though. So getting started, how do we make a class? How do we join a class? Now, you might have already done the join a class by this time. Well, first, you need to get to Google Classroom. So if you just type in Classroom, if you don't already have this bookmarked at all, you can just type in Classroom and it'll be Google Classroom. You might need to click log in with Google, or it probably already does this, but joining a class, you're looking for that little plus sign and click join class, and then there is the code to enter. So that is the code that eventually will be on the first slide of this presentation. This is the same place where students would enter it. Basically, if you are someone who is needing to enter a code, you are considered a student. If you are the person who has made the classroom, you're kind of considered the teacher. So yes, you might be a teacher, but for this classroom, you are now one of my students. So you'll enter the code there. That's the same place your students would do that as well. Now, if you're going to make a class, you're going to go up to this plus sign as well and just go create a class. Now, this first bit that is on here about linking is that you can integrate your Google Classroom with Infinite Campus. At least in Portage schools, we have this set up that we can link that grading with Infinite Campus, which is super nice, which means you could have a paperless gradebook. This last school year, I had a completely paperless gradebook. I started the year and I was like, okay, I'm going to have this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. And then as we were doing all of our assignments online, I'm like, I can just keep track of everything online and do my due diligence there. And then it just imports into Infinite Campus, or Student Information System is what SIS stands for. If that's available, this is where you will select yours. You can see all of mine are already linked to a classroom course. You can kind of see them in the background, so that's why your Google Classroom will look different than mine, because these are the classes I'm teaching. You're not part of all these. So create a class here. I'm not going to be able to sync it, but you can if it's there. And if it is there, that's how you can have your gradebook kind of be paperless. Google Classroom, I will tell you, does have like a grade calculate option, which could be a possibility. I would be a bit more cautious to do that. I would use Google Classroom more just as your warehouse of grades, and then Infinite Campus is where you kind of sort them, put them into categories, assign weights if needed. More to come there. So class name, let's call this Hacking Class Presentations. Now, if you're like, wait, don't you have one that's already there? Yes, I started making one because I wanted to tell you more about that. So I'm just going to make it called Hacking Class Presentations. You can give it a section name. So if this is, say, my first hour science, I might call it first hour science, just so it shows up like you can see in the background here. But I might still put first hour there. I might put the class or the subject I'm teaching, and then what room I might be teaching in. These 3 parts are not required. You just need to at least have a class name. And then simply click create. Now, once it's made, you might notice in the background, my little classrooms have different little images and pictures, and they don't look like the standard ones. It's because I made them myself. Here's how you can change this banner if it matters to you. You can go to select a theme here, and on it you can choose. They've got a bunch of very nice ones that you can choose from. If you're looking for something a little bit more, this is how you can go about it. So I did link here, click here for some examples, and this is just my running document of ones that I've made. And so what I did for this last year with virtual learning is I even put like classroom opens at this time, attendance by this time. These are the days you need to be here live for class. This is the day that it's only this class. There's a few classes where I didn't have necessarily anything, so I just left it. You're gonna have to play around with this and crop it. You're welcome to reuse this slide. I went on, and how you can make your own is make a Google Slides presentation. And when it's new, you'll go File, and then you want to go to, oops, this guy is in the way. You want to get to this page setup at the bottom, and then you're going to choose Custom, and you're going to choose what the size is. This is also where you can go to get it into pixels or centimeters, whichever. You can also Google it if for some reason it's not working for you. It's working for me. So this is how I have mine set up. So I have one that I've kind of made. I'm going to use this. So I'm going to go File and Download. I'm going to save it as a JPEG so that I can come back to this. And then when I go to my Google Classroom, I can select Upload a Photo. And then this should have saved to my desktop. If it didn't, then it must have saved to my downloads. There it is. Look at this hack right here. Do you see this? You can drag your file in so you don't have to go through the select, upload, click select. Heavily, thank you, Jenny Carpolinia. She's where I get a lot of these little tips and tricks that I just kind of combine with things that I know as well. She's awesome if you don't know her. I'm going to go ahead and click Select Class Theme. So if you didn't see, I made this so it fits the whole area. And then, voila! I have a different one that's personalized. Wasn't all that difficult, and it's just kind of cute. So now that we've got that looking adorable, how do we send out invites? So we're going to go to the people here. There's a few ways you can go about this. You can just give students the code, and that's fine. In fact, when you're on the stream here, it says class code, and you can just make this really big, put it up, students do what they need to. You can copy the invite link, send out an email to students. If you would like, you can go to people, and you can start inviting students. So like if I'm going to add my other email, look at that one, and I will send an invite. And then students can respond to said invite. You can do whichever one you want. With virtual learning last year, I kind of went for sending out the invites, so it was just an email they had to look for. Usually I just put the class code on a Google or up on the board and students join it. One other thing I do, and this I'll talk about in a different session I'll be teaching, but with it is I send out an email to every single student that has all of the important information of the year. So that is like, we'll use Science World. Here's the link, here's the password. Here is Fulfillment Game. Sadly, Adobe died over the last school year, but we'd send out that username and password, our textbook username and password. Here's the class code to get into first hour science, second hour science. So then students have it and it's all right there. Does it take me time at the beginning of the year? Yes. Does it save me so much more time mid-year? Also, yes. I would highly consider doing that. I mean, you can just kind of make a form email that's kind of set up and then just add in information as needed. Life saver. And then if a student's like, I deleted my important email, just go into your email, look up their last name, and if you titled it like important information, do not delete, you're going to see it super easy, and bam, you can share it out with them. Another thing you can do is turn on Guardian Invites. It's a newer feature that is really helpful, and link it to the student information system, like I had said before. We'll go through these details a little bit more, but this is where those Guardian summaries are. I would definitely turn that on, because if students or if parents choose to get that, like after the students have joined, if their email is linked on Infinite Campus, it'll get linked to here. And then families can be getting updates of like what's missing on Google Classroom, which is super helpful. Now, I told you I kind of made an extra hacking class for a reason. And that is because you can start a class in a few different other ways. Now, if I'm going to teach the exact same material year after year, I might consider copying a class. So if you see this little dot, dot, dot I clicked, I can copy a class, which means I just get like, it's each year, which might be better if you're not doing like, here's an assignment each day. It's more like, here's the unit. It's a possibility. This one, I think I'm going to archive it right now because I don't need it. You can't delete a classroom, but you can kind of send it to the archives where it just kind of is hidden here. So it causes it to be archived for all participants. They can't be modified by the teachers or students unless they're restored. This class will be moved to the archives class section. So if you want to make a copy though, you're welcome to do that. It's an option. So heading into our next bit, so I'm kind of referring back to these slides as I go. I'll mostly stay in Google Classroom, but if you're wondering where I'm getting some of this and kind of guiding us through it, it's on these slides. So kind of an areas overview, we click into our Google Classroom. So here's the stream. And if you look up at the top middle here, it says stream, classwork, people, and grades. The stream, this is where you can, well, like it says, create and schedule announcements, respond to student posts. Be cautious here. You might need to build a little bit of a digital or community, bit of digital citizenship, that if you are going to let students be responding to one another, that it's appropriate. Otherwise, there are some students, they realize this feature exists and let it go wild. Can you turn this off? Yes. When you get to the people section, I'll try and remember to mention that. This is a good place to put in any information that you have, like, hey, study guide, or here's a test, it's coming up on this day. Reminder, bring a jacket because we're doing rocket launches tomorrow. I will tell you, in the stream is not where students look first for information though. So be cautious of what you're putting there as well. If it's like something super important, there's a better way to go about this. Classwork. This is where you are going to put your assignments, your materials for class. Just a word to the wise. Make things an assignment so they pop out more to students. If it's an assignment, if you put like, here's the worksheet as the assignment, but you put here's the slides as material, you can bet 90% of your students are not going to look at that slideshow and they're just going to try the worksheet. They're going to get frustrated doing that worksheet because they're like, where's the information? They're not even going to look at the materials because the materials doesn't get sent out as like, hey, there's a grade associated with this and it's missing for you. Where the assignment will show up like, hey, this is due on such and such day, and then it'll say missing. If you just put everything all together, they'll see it all together. Okay. It is okay, though, to post materials. We'll talk about that here in a minute. The people in the grades area. So with the people, here's where you can invite people. This is where you can invite, you'll see the guardians show up. This is kind of nice because if you have put a lot of people, if you have your students in here and you want to see their work at a snapshot, you'll be able to click on there, and then when you click on there, it'll show all of that student's assignments. So if you need to send a parent like, hey, you didn't get all, like you as a teacher might not have gotten all your grades synced in a campus, but you have them all like they're turned in or not on Google Classroom, that might be a great place to say like, hey, grades are not updated on Infinite Campus yet, but here's what your student's missing because they literally have not turned it in. It's not a matter of me needing to finish grading them. They have not done their work. And then the grades here is where the entire grade book will exist. I do have a screenshot of it for a little bit later, just so you can see kind of what that looks like. While we're in the peoples here, I did want to mention, if you click this checkbox, there are a few things you can do. You can email the students as mass, like you can select everyone in the class or just a few. So that's really nice. You can remove students here if needed. And there are ways to mute students once they've joined. You can select mute all, and then that will enable you to say that they cannot be posting nonstop. Again, that's going to depend on your classroom community that you have set up. A lot of times I tend to err on the side of caution, just because if it's not a piece of the technology I'm not regularly looking at, I don't feel confident in making sure it's staying appropriate. Like, if I'm going to allow that to happen, I want to make sure I'm noticing it and being able to monitor it. You're going to have to decide that yourself. So when we start to organize it, we're probably going to want to go back to this classwork area because this is where everything will show up. Now, you are just starting your new classroom. In here, keep it organized from the start for success throughout the year. Some ideas you might want to consider. You might want to have like a keepers or resources area. This might be where you put your syllabus, your common websites, common passwords, grading scales, any other resources you want to refer back to. Remember, I mentioned that you might not want to have things as materials, you want them as assignments. If it's some of those keeper types of things where it's like a website to go back to, that might be something you want to have as a material because you don't want that like showing up to your students every day, but you want that to be there. And so you might want to have like a keepers area. Then when you're posting, you might want to post things by topic. So keep everything in group by like, this is all of the chemistry stuff. This is all of the rocks and plate tectonics learning that we're doing. Maybe you want to go by week. Maybe you want to go by unit. The topic does not affect the grading in any way. Only the date on the assignment that it's due and the points the assignment is worth will impact the grading at this point. If you're doing it by week, it might make sense so that you can keep each week clustered for students to find assignments from when they're absent, which worked really nice this last year when we were virtual because it was like, here's the date, here's the assignment. Maybe though by unit would make more sense because then it's like, here's everything. You could still put the date in the title of that assignment as well. So here is an example of like by unit that I've done before. So I had like all the presidential firsts, all the chapter 9 information, all the chapter 10. There was a few other assignments that went with these, but this is kind of the big things I wanted to get out to students. So this might be a by topic thing that you would have. If you are going to go by week might look more like this. And then each week I posted, here is the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And then all the way at the bottom, oops. Well, actually there's a quicker way to get about things. If you look on the side here, all the topics, I had like, here's all the work below this area is past due. You can go back to all the topics and students can jump around as needed. There was the keepers, so then students could jump to those. And here's where I had like classroom expectations, our syllabus, lab scoring, here's our standards. That's going to be up to you. I would though not just have a bunch of things just posted. As the year got to the end, I did have just some kind of announcements-y types of things that I just left at the top because I wanted those to be first things students looked at. You might have to kind of see how it works for your teaching style as well. So we need to make some assignments. Now, the best way, let's get rid of a few. We've got a lot of tabs getting open here. We'll head back to this guy. We're back to hacking presentations. So when you are going to go to posting, there's a few ways to post. You can post by an assignment, by a Kami assignment. There's a quiz assignment. There is the question, material, the post, and a topic. What do these look like? Where do I find these? Here is where there's this create button. Now, if you have just an assignment, this grade will be integrated with then Infinite Campus. Honestly, I would probably recommend making all of your assignments an assignment, or when I'm talking about reuse a post, just keep reusing an assignment type of post, because then there's always a grade that is associated with that assignment, and it'll show students like, hey, this is when it is due, hey, this is missing, hey, this is turned in, which is going to lead to more success in students knowing what's actually expected of them to do and what resources to use. There's a Kami assignment. Now, you do need to get the Kami extension, so you'll need to go to the Chrome Web Store and type Kami, and then you'll see this little kind of bluish purple K. Kami assignments can be really nice. Basically, it takes a PDF that you have and makes it into an editable document, meaning not editable as in they can go in and actually change what the font looks like, but they can add words, kind of overlay it on top of that document. It's basically digitizing a paper copy. If it's very last minute, maybe your copies didn't come in from the copy center. Maybe you changed it and you're like, ooh, I need 100 copies, but I don't want to get in trouble for making 100 copies at the copier. This might be the option for you. You will need to save your document as a PDF and then upload it into Kami. Not difficult at all. I mean, it'll show you there. And then when students get it, it makes a copy for each of them if you select them. Okay, so as I was looking at Kami, it looks like my trial has ended. Sadly, you can find trials for, usually when the school year starts, you can find a new trial. If for some reason you can't and you don't want to spend that full $100, what you can do is there's another document kind of maker or assignment maker called TeacherMade that's going to do a lot the same thing. It'll also send out the assignments one by one, and then it'll be all integrated and grading. So thank you, Summer. I guess we are going to move to our other bit. So we have the assignment. You almost always want to post something as some sort of an assignment, even if you're reusing a post and making it reused assignment. There's a quiz type of assignment. This is kind of nice, except that when you make it, when you click on it, it automatically creates you a new Google form, which is like, it's kind of nice. You could import all of your grade or all of your questions. That's a newer feature that they have. You could delete it out and add yours. Sometimes I find this to be a little bit hit and miss. It's kind of nice because you can turn the locked mode on and off from right here, and you can also turn on and off the grade importing. Something that I'm not a huge fan of, though, is a lot of times how we grade in either science or history is a lot of our assignments are out of kind of a completion grade, like you tried, not very much, so we have like a plus, check, minus, plus. Maybe you got one or two wrong, but you gave this your best effort, because this is where like the learning came from. Maybe it's a check, you got a few more wrong, but you did try. Minus, okay, you tried, but you're missing some stuff here. So even though an assignment might have been out of 17 points, I only truly want it out of like 5 points, because we consistently, each assignment's maybe out of 5 points, or maybe it's consistently out of 2 points. So then I really don't want it out of, say, 17 points that the quiz might have. So a lot of times I just like to make my own assignment, and then I'll post the quiz, which I'll show you a little bit later, myself, and then just type the grades in myself. You can use, there's a screen split, and then you can have like grades on one side and be typing it in to Google Classroom on the other side of your computer, which is kind of nice. I would go that way personally, just because I don't want to have to go in and change all the points as they get completed. It is up to you, though. The other ones that are here are also the question. This is kind of nice, especially if you have maybe a multi-day project, and this is kind of your check-in, like how far did you get, or how far did your group get? What question does your group have at this point in the project? Maybe it's a question that you want to have for helping to build community, that when students get there, this is almost like their bell work. They're answering their bell work questions here, like, how are you today? That might be there. So that the question's really nice. You can assign a grade with a question. So an assignment or a question would both be good because there's a grade associated. If there's a grade associated, it'll kind of pop up more on the student side like, hey, this is something to take note of. The material, this is where I have like my syllabus. This is where I have our standards. This is where I have the passwords to say Science World all on here. But material, I would not at all put anything that goes with an assignment in the material unless you have a very good justification. And you're an adult, you are a teacher, you've gone to school, you have plenty of knowledge to know what you need to do. I would just really highly recommend against doing the material if it's somehow associated with a grade or an assignment or some sort of learning you want students to get to. Honestly, even if you're going to have a 4-day project and you're like, well, I want them to have the presentation, then they're just going to work on it over the next few days, still assign that material out as an assignment, and you can post it as if it's ungraded, meaning you can say like, yes, they've used it, no, they haven't, but at least it's showing like it's popping up for them, okay? And then reuse post, this is the best. You can reuse any posts that you've made. We'll come back. We're actually going to put a few in here. And then here is the topics. So for me, what I might do is I said, do you want to group it by unit? Do you want to group it by week? Do you want to group it in some other way? So topics I might have is I might do past presentations. And I might have 2021, 2022 presentations. And click add. 2021 presentations. Doesn't like that. There we go. So I might start adding, and it looks like it added all of them for me. So how you can delete a topic, there's a 3 ... and then just click delete, and that's fine. So ways I can go about some of this. So for past presentations, I told you I had that other class, so to speak, set up, and it's for this reason. So I'm reusing a post. Now, when I look here, these are all the classes I have ever had, meaning I can go back and get the post from any class that I've ever posted in. So this last year, when we were posting something for every single day, I can go back, I can find that, and I can just reuse it. If your brain didn't just like blow up, just take a minute to let your brain blow up a little bit and realize how exciting and important this is. Potentially, if you are going to be, so you saw I had like a first hour science and a second hour science, I would make the post because I wanted to schedule it. I liked to make sure I was ahead of my game. It's just how I am. And I would schedule 1 week in advance and have all those just kind of sitting there. However, I can't post to multiple classes at once when I do that. I can't schedule it to multiple at once. At least not right now. Maybe that's a feature that Google will come out with. But what I could do is schedule it and then go back into the class. Like say I posted or scheduled it in first hour science. I could go to my second hour science Google Classroom, reuse that post and schedule it in second hour. So I didn't have to redo anything. It was all just kind of a copy and paste of sorts. So if I go back into this one, so here's my hacking class, I had a few that I had added. So I had from years before, I had you've got Gmail. Now, if you look, this is the materials button, which these are past presentations I've had. Honestly, you might not ever want to go back into these. That's fine, but I thought I would just toss them on here so they're all together. And then I'll go ahead and hit post. You will notice all of the information, bam, is right there. You may also have noticed that there's a little emoji here. We'll talk about that when we get to grading. But the little bits here and there sometimes can make your life easy because when you go to grade, there's a quick way to look at all the grades at once. If you have a little emoji you know you're looking for, it's quicker. Just a thought. Just a thought. Now, if I'm good to post it, I can click post. There's a little arrow here. So I could go schedule or save it as a draft, discard the draft. I can send it to other classes if I wanted, but I can only do that if I'm going to post it. You'll notice the schedule has disappeared when I selected other classes. I can only schedule to one class at a time. So see, it's back to one. I can also change and send it out only to a certain number of students. We're on a material right now, so the material really doesn't matter much. Maybe this might be where you need to differentiate. Like you're sending out differentiated materials and you're going to have all the students turn it in to a single assignment place. That might actually work kind of nice, although then you're going to need to train your students to know to look for that material. You use your professional opinion. I'm going to go ahead and click post because I do want to post this right now. So there is my keepers, and I forgot. I've got past presentations. This is the one I actually wanted in, so I could just pull it down. Now I don't really want this keepers, so I can go to the 3 ... and delete it again. Okay, I can reuse a post. Now I've got 2 others that I've done before. So there's one called Hacks, Tips, and Tricks. This will be the 3rd year that I'll have done kind of a hacks, tips, and tricks before. Again, look at that. Now for this topic, I'm going to want it to be in the presentations. It should just show up. Yep, there it goes. So I want it in the past presentations there. Again, I could schedule it or I can post it. I'm going to post it because that's what I want to do. And then there was one more that I had that I wanted to put in here. Now look, I've pretty much just remade that class by doing this. Super nice. And how I got rid of this keepers is I just clicked the X. And then it says no topic, and then there's all my topics that pop up, the past presentations, and I can hit post again. If I want to organize these, I can pull them down, and then I can organize those. Now, I do want to post some presentations. By the time you are getting onto this Google Classroom, there might be some other presentations and or videos that are accompanying it. So I am going to go ahead and, you know what, we're going to make this one assignment from scratch. This one is going to be our running the gauntlet of Google Classroom. I will just copy and paste this. If you don't know the copy paste shortcut, if you select everything and then go, it's on a Mac, Command C. On a desktop, it should be Control C. I can go Command C, Command V, ta-da! And then some things I might want to have on here was audience. I spelled that wrong. It'll make a little squiggle. Audience. So this is mostly for 612 staff. And I could also add like a little description, something like this. Oops. I think I will just copy and paste all of that. And if you see here, Google now lets you bold, italicize, underline, and bullet point things. I know. If you're not excited, like, I love my fonts. I love okay. So this is running the gauntlet of Google Classroom. Now I do need to attach this here. So you can attach links. So maybe it's a website link. So if you can see up here, I'm going to be going to all of these different links. I could add every single one of those links. I think I'm going to hold off for now because I want to focus on just the Google Classroom piece, and all of those links I have up there, you can type in their name and it'll pull up. If I did have a file directly from my computer, I could add that here. If I want to add a video from YouTube, I can add that here. So I'm going to start with the Google Drive because I need to add this slideshow. So when I click on it, I can look up by recent. I can look up by my drive. I can also search my drive. Do give this enough think time that it gets to this point. Sometimes I try and go too quick and then it just randomly picks one. I'm like, I don't want that. So just for sake of like, whoops, I clicked all these things. And actually I don't want to send in all these things. I'm going to go ahead and hit the X and the X because this is the only one I want. You will notice here it says students can view file. There's other options like students can edit file. So that would mean that you guys would be able to edit this exact file Typically, that's probably something I don't want to do unless you have something collaborative. Maybe you're sending it out as a smaller group. And then there's also make a copy for each student. That's usually the one I look for. Sometimes the make a copy for each student option doesn't show up. I haven't quite gotten to the bottom of what's happening there, but then you might just want to do view file and then in the directions say, you need to make a copy of this presentation. It's not that difficult to tell them and, train students to do that. The only thing is they need to then upload it, make sure they add that back to Classroom so you can see it. Right here, it'll make it a copy for each student. So as you go through, even if, say, I have my cat Miko and myself as our students in the class, if Miko was naughty and didn't do any work on it, I could still see his slideshow and see that it's empty. Or if he just started a little bit of the work, I could see he started some of it and just didn't finish it. So that's kind of nice of why you might want to try and make sure that you can do the make a copy for each student. Here's where you can change the points. I usually, like I was telling you earlier, like out of 5 points, or for history, we did a lot of out of 2s. If you want to do the ungraded, that kind of just makes this into a checklist. So like, yes, students did it or not, they can turn it in. 5 seems to be what we usually go with. Here's where you can put a due date. With a due date, if you're going to make an assignment or a question, reuse a post, anything that is for a grade, put a date and a due date of when you want this done and completed. So let's say we are learning about we're learning about the Battle of Fort Sumter, and we're learning about it on Thursday the 10th. Now, we're not going to grade that assignment until Friday the 11th, but I want it done on the 10th. I should schedule it for the 10th, and don't put a late assignment. Just put the end of the school day, because that's when you want it more or less complete. Yes, students might need to work on it for homework, but that's kind of the time, like this is when this assignment should be complete, because a lot of times, at least in my classes, science and history, students really don't have homework. I mean, we have enough time that they could get the work done in class. They might need to just finish it up, if anything, but I want them to have it done really Thursday so they're ready for Friday. Don't put Friday's date. If you put Friday's date, they're like, we're not grading it until a later time. Put the date you want. And then I can put the topic I want. So this is a 2021-2022 presentation. I can send this out to whichever students I need. I will let you know, and I would highly recommend that if you have multiple different learners in your class, you can just have a bunch of different assignments on Infinite Campus, and it'll only grade students in certain spots based on if they were given that assignment. I really, really, really try to just keep all of the student work in one posting together. You might need to make that call yourself. A lot of times what I end up doing is having like everyone gets the assignment except for, we'll use Miko again. Let's say Miko is a student service by special education that does need a modified assignment. I might make this assignment, use that reuse post feature. How exciting. And then take out the assignment that they were supposed to get and put in the one that I want Miko to actually get. And then when Miko does it, I will save it to Google Classroom and I'll just hand enter that modified grade. It does take an extra minute or two, but I also want them to get the learning that they need. I would just be cautious of making like, I'm going to send Miko his own. I'm going to send Caitlin her own. I'm going to send Susie and Sandy, Allie, Danny, Sharon, John, Mike, because then you can't, it's really, really, really hard to have a paperless gradebook. So try and keep your assignments as streamlined as possible. Try to keep it as like students are getting exactly the assignment that they need as possible. It's going to look a little bit different for everyone. That's just a thought, a recommendation for you. When you are ready then to post, you can click assign. You can use the schedule. You can use the save draft. If you're like, oh, I actually don't want this, I can delete it. Now, where I get my emojis, there is this emoji keyboard that I got off the Chrome store. So Chrome extensions and emoji keyboard, and it's got this little like heart. So I can find like running. Or you can get a little runner here, or maybe a little shoe, and then copy that and paste that in here. Another great place to look for emojis is Emojipedia. And it's easy to copy and paste them from Emojipedia. You can search them here. So just a cute little way to go about that. I'm going to go ahead and hit assign. I'm actually going to change the date though to the end of actually this next school year. So we're going really far out. We'll just go June 1st at 3:30. And da 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 da. Now, after this is done, if I really like the way that that one is set up, I can reuse this post. And now last time we went into this is the hack class. So if you see it says select post from hack class, this one only had a few. I'd have to go back to my other assignments, go in to this one that doesn't say archived anymore. And that's where now running the gauntlet of Google Classroom will show up. This is probably where I'll change it. A lot of times if I'm sending out an assignment to students, I might put like Wednesday, June 9th, running the gauntlet. Something I could do, I know I've got a presentation of the hacks, tips, and tricks. I could put those on here. I could delete these things out. I can change the description then. I can change the audience. I can change the points. I can change the due date. I can change the topic. I can change what classes it's going for. I can change what students it's going to go for. I know. It's kind of nice. It's kind of nice. So those are some of the big things. Now, if I don't want this one, I can just click on those 3 dots and delete it. If I did have, for say, this running the gauntlet of Google Classroom, if I have an extra something, like an extra, maybe it's a link or it's something that it's like, it's not actually part of the assignment, but it is, but it isn't. Like, you know how I said those materials parts, like don't put things in the materials, you might want to put them here. Like something that we ended up doing is in our classes for history, because we have a history textbook, and we didn't know, like people in class, we didn't want students to be bringing them to class every single day. So we just scanned in the picture or the pages that we needed each week or each day. So what I might have done is, instead of making a copy for each student, I might go to this and click share. And then I can, here's the link. I could also add it as an attachment, but sometimes I didn't. Especially, you might notice in here, we were having a few difficulties with students completing some of their own work. It got solved pretty well when we started using paper copies, or at least it seemed to be a little bit better solved, because wordings were very oddly exactly the same. And it's like, why would you write that in that way? And why would multiple people write it in that way? So we sent out paper copies. So I didn't want students to get this as an assignment copy. I would just get the shareable link here, and then copy this link. And then on the assignment, I would say, like, here is what your paper copy looks like. Reuse the page in your packet or recreate on blank paper. We also had a lot of students who, because they were doing so much technology stuff, just being able to not be on a screen, even for one class, was helpful. Just, it was getting to be kind of technology overload. So a lot of students did appreciate, just because you can put a document online doesn't mean it's a better version. Sometimes paper is the best version, and that's fine. So sending out packets, students had the paper just in front of them. That kind of ended up being the best version that we had. I'm going to go ahead and click save and delete out some of that, but just kind of some interesting bits to kind of consider for that. Okay, so if we go to then grading of our Google Classroom assignments now. Now, on the main page of Google Classroom at the top left, when you're clicking into the 3 stacked bars up here, there is a to review. Now you'll notice on here that it shows you how many are turned in and how many are assigned. You can go through and do that. I mean, if I go to my first hour science and I do that, I would need to go in and do this and click on, wait for it all to load, and then click on, oh, do I have anything to grade here? It'll show up here in a second, but I have to wait. Do I have anything to grade here? So there it shows me, oops, my turned in or not. Do I have anything to grade here? Do I have anything to grade here? How do I know if a student posted a new one? This was like a full-time job trying to monitor this until I learned about this. So in the top left corner, there's 3 stacked bars. It says to review. It has all of the assignments that you have sent out to students, every single one of them. And now this takes all of the classes that you've had, so that's why you want to archive some of those classes if you're no longer using them, otherwise they're going to be showing up in here. But I have every single assignment, and look how easily I can see. So I can see, okay, someone did the rocket prep into safety. I can go in and just grade that one. I can see that there's nothing new in a lot of these. I can save myself for time. I can look and see, okay, there was one of these turned in, one of these turned in. I mean, it's the end of the school year now, so students were probably just wanting to clean up their Google Classroom, which is fine because these were all at zeros. Once I'm done reviewing them, I can click the 3 stacked dots and mark them as reviewed. And then they kind of go into an area where I have access to them, but I'm just not going to look at them much. This is where I would offer a little bit of caution. Is it might be really nice or a really great idea to think, oh, I'm going to be a co-teacher with someone. I'm going to add them as a co-teacher because then they can use the same posts that I'm making. The only thing is you're also going to see all of their to review assignments. And when you click reviewed, it's going to show as reviewed for them too, so they're not going to see it. So then you need to be creative. If you look, this is why I have all these little emojis so I can see like, okay, yep, this is the Civil War one. This was a review for a vocab. This one was about photosynthesis and cellular respiration. I'm looking for the little flower. I try and make them make sense, or maybe they make funny sense in my head, you know, you do you. But that's kind of helpful. Maybe if you're going to have co-teachers, maybe one of you always uses a star and one of you always uses a, I don't know, a box or something. You can decide. That might be a way to get around that, but you don't want to like be crossing over. I know there was someone who added me as a co-teacher and I was like, oh, I don't need to look at that. And then they were like, you're marking all my things as reviewed and I'm not realizing that I need to grade them. A big thing when you do go to grade these assignments, so this is kind of what it looks like. It's missing a bit of this. You can change the grade here and you can make it back to ungraded or any number of points. Okay, I found Angie T. She is one of our fantastic paras in our building. I didn't want to have a student's name on here. So on here, when you're entering a grade, you will need to, where you see this 5, you'll need to click and you'll need to type it in, but it's not done at that point. Now it's off the screen because it's right above where I have a student name, but kind of in the upper left-hand side, there's a spot that says return, and you need to click that to get the grades to return. Otherwise, they're not going to get turned in. Now, so some students, they can click the turned in and it'll look like this. So this is where you're looking to see like they've turned it in. Now, if they didn't actually turn any work in, return it to them. Select to have it returned to them, because if you put a 0, it will show up as it is a completed assignment and they have nothing to do. put a grade in. This is, so you can see we've got they got their full points for their grade as we were going. And you can see I put a comment for every single one. Now, when you add grades, if you go through, you add all of the ones that, and you see this like not turned in, is because it was an assignment we did live with class. As class was ending, I walked around and I checked papers. So even though they didn't officially turn it in on Google Classroom, I went back and I typed in that they did get it. You can post a grade to, or you can return a set of assignments to all of those students at once and add a comment that specifically goes to all of them. Usually I would type in like, great job, thanks for learning today, have a great day, or thanks for learning about forces of motion, have a great day. Something like that, just to kind of make it like, hey, you've noticed. Now, if there's something that's missing, I did just copy and paste it, but I would say like, today we're learning about blah, blah, blah. Use the blah, blah, blah to finish this assignment and then turn it in when you're done. So that students at least know that you recognize that, hey, this is not like, we need to take care to like, you need to go back and do this, or hey, I realize you turned this in and it's blank, you still need to do this. If you put a 0, then it won't show up that they have something to do. If you just return it to them blank, then it's going to show up as missing, and that's what you want. So back to grading and some other important bits that we have. So we've got that to review so that you can go to each of those assignments very quickly. Now, this was just kind of how to go through and be able to add information all at once. You can go through and read this. It's what I had just mentioned. Some big advice though, again, return the grades so that they go back to students. If you just type in the number, nothing will happen. You have to click the return button. Do not mark assignments as 0. Return them ungraded if anything. If you have an assignment that says it's ungraded and you're like, you're just checking it off, but there's no number associated with it, if they click turn in and return it, it's going to say completed. I would really, really recommend, especially if you're going to be trying to do some sort of standards-based grading, even if you're trying to just do a completion grade and a check mark is what makes more sense, at least make the assignment out of 1 point, because then when you return it, it'll show as missing or completed. If you truly use the ungraded feature, then it'll still get marked as complete because they'll have turned it in. The only time I mark it as ungraded is if it is an in-class activity that I want students to pay attention to, and then after the time has passed that we needed it, I'll mark it as ungraded. Like an example, when I really want students to, hey, like, we needed to have students make sure they joined live because we had the high school counselors in class, I put it down as you need to join, and I think I put it out of like 1,000,000 points just to make it like, we need to be there. Once it was over, I changed it back to ungraded, and then I just marked them all as completed. So then that still showed up there, but it was like, this is past due. It's not really a grade, so to speak, but it served its purpose for long enough. So just like I didn't want to show any grades or any names before, I didn't want to do that when going to Infinite Campus. So how does this look? What do? You need to do this. So you'll go to the grades page on Google Classroom. So if I go back to Google Classroom and go to the grades page, so we'll go back to our hacking class presentations, and I go to grades. Now you're going to have a big grid that'll look more like this, and then student names will be along the side here. If you have this linked with your Infinite Campus, this is this little button where it says SIS export. That is how you export the grades. There'll be a pop-up that'll come up and you can select which grades you want to import. Now, if you have some modified assignments, that is where I sometimes will uncheck them. So remember I said Miko needed a modified assignment. I might unselect that just so it doesn't go to Infinite Campus. And then when I get to Infinite Campus, I'll just add the grade that Miko actually got. If you are on the grades part and maybe you're grading something and it's just like a one and done, like you just need to quick add it, that you don't need to go into the reviewed part. I know sometimes I would talk with a student and maybe I graded a paper assignment and for some reason I put a a 1, but I actually meant to put a 5 or something like that, that I don't really need to necessarily get a new comment, whichever, then I would just type it in on the grades part, because this is where you can see all the students at once. Or like if it's a multi-day project and I had like, it was like a 5-point completion for each chunk each day, and a student turned it all in at once, I would just add those grades right here. What you do need to do is type it in. When you click on that and type it in, you'll see these 3 little stacked dots where I've got this arrow. You need to click return and follow through with returning that. Heads up, with this SIS export, it's only after everything has been done. So if you're like, oh, I will click SIS export and then it'll do its thing for the rest of the year, it will not. What you should do is get all of your grades entered, make sure they are all what you want. Once you're done grading everything, then click the SIS export. Now, what does it look like when you get to Infinite Campus? When you get to Infinite Campus, you're going to go to whatever class that is. So this one I think is first hour science. And there's going to be this little bar that shows up that says uncategorized assignments. And then it'll tell you how many are there. So if I had like 6 at once, there'll be 6 there. If there's only 1, there'll be 1 there. What you're going to go through and do though, then, is bulk add classes. So you'll click on it and you can either bulk add classes or add them singly. So if you're going to do it by bulk, you'll click on, let me make this bigger so it's a little easier to see. You'll click this little box and then that'll check all the boxes below it. You can click on the standard grading task and then choose what it goes with, like if it is with the quarter grade or progress grade, and then you can choose what category it's in. Once you're done choosing those, you can click Fill Selected and Save. Now, if it's just a single one like this, then you don't need to click any boxes on this far left-hand side. Just select the standard grading task, just select the uncategorized assignment into the category you want, and click Save. Then it'll show up, and these are some things that you are going to be able to change. Now, and I did this, I'm not ashamed, it happens. Remember I said Miko, my cat, but my current placeholder for a student who needs modified assignments. Now, let's say I forgot to unselect that button, or maybe there was an assignment I actually didn't want to export to Infinite Campus. Maybe I accidentally, but I selected it anyways. You can delete it at this point. So when you click on like the extra information of it, you can delete that assignment and it'll go away. It's not that big a deal. This is where I would then it's kind of nice sometimes if I did it though, because I could see like Caitlin and Sharon got a 2 out of 2. Miko also got a 2, and then other people got a 1. I would just shift Miko's grade into the column I actually wanted to keep where everyone's grade was, and then just delete the single Miko assignment. I did have a student this year, let's use Miko's name again, who didn't do much of their work. So anytime they turn stuff in, I just had to remember to go into Infinite Campus and do that. You're going to have to do what works for you. That worked for me because it wasn't that big of a deal. Do what works for you. But things you cannot change once it gets to Infinite Campus. You cannot change the assigned date. You cannot change the due date. You cannot change the assignment's name. You cannot change the total points. You can do that, though, on Google Classroom if you need to. And then when you export your grades to Infinite Campus again, then it'll update. Things you can change when they get to Infinite Campus. The abbreviation of the name, and it just kind of comes up with one on its own usually. So like this was like Wednesday 5/26 is what it usually just, and those question marks are because it was like the emoji. Infinite Campus just didn't recognize the emoji. You can change the sequence of it. You can change the category. So this last year we just had our grades out of points total. If you wanted to have you have formative versus summative categories, you can change that though. You can change the grading task. So whoops, I clicked progress and I actually wanted, in quarter grades, and I can change the multiplier. This was sometimes nice if, say, we had a test it was out of 100 points, So I wanted students to be able to see that percent. So I left it out of 100 points on Google Classroom, but then I had it only worth half their credit because it was kind of a small test. So then really it only counts as 50 points, but students can see their score out of 100, so then they know what their percentage is. Again, use your best judgment, but those are the things that you're able to change or not change on Infinite Campus versus Google Classroom. So that kind of gets us to the point where you have made your Google Classroom. You are able to post assignments. You are able to grade assignments. You are putting the grades so families can see them on Infinite Campus. So what are some other things that we need to know about Google Classroom? There are a number of settings worth looking into. When you go to Google just the class, and I could do this from any of these other spots, there's this cogwheel. Let's go ahead and look into this. Here's where I can change the class name, description, section, room number, subject. I can change and link this class to my student information system. Heads up, if you link it and then unlink it, it's going to you're going to need to re-export all of your grades. Meaning, don't do this in the middle of the quarter, or don't do this halfway through the year. If you want to have a different Google Classroom for each of your classes each quarter, that might be the way to go about this, so that you can kind of have a refresh or a restart. I just did one and just kind of kept it moving. I kept all of my points on Google Classroom, just whatever it was, and then when it got to Infinite Campus, then I sorted it into categories. You can do what's going to make most sense to you. I liked that because then students could see what their point total, like their grade, like they got a 5 out of 5 or 4 out of 5. They could see they got 100% on a test versus not. And then when it went to Infinite Campus, they could see how that filtered in. So if you have grading categories, but if you unlink your student information system and then relink it and re-export the assignments, it will send a second copy because it's like, oh, this is all new information because I've just been relinked. So I wouldn't do that unless it's a new quarter. Manage invite codes. This is where you can change if students are able to use this class code, if you want to see that or not. Class view. So this is the same. You could show your class view quickly. This is just another place to be able to show it really big. Stream, this is where students can post and comment, or you can change it to say only you can, or students can only comment. Again, if you are going to be able to monitor that and see that often, go for it. A lot of times, unless it's like something specific to the day's activities, I turn it off. Classwork on the streams, show condensed notifications, show attachments and details, hide notifications. That's up to you. Show deleted items. That's only you can see them. But let's say you made an assignment, you accidentally posted it, you wanted to schedule it. This could save you. Guardian summaries. Turn this on. Your families will get, so this is just a little bit more information, but it'll look something like this, that your families will get like a weekly summary for, I guess, feelings. So here's some student work. This is kind of the information like missing from last week. What is some work that's coming up? What is some class activity from the classes? I highly, highly, highly recommend doing this because then families can be getting this information to be seeing this. They can unsubscribe from it if they want. They can change this settings. And if students or if parents are not seeing that your class has this available, they can contact you and say, hey, can you please do this? No, families do not have to have a Gmail for that to work. Not at all. It'll work anyways. Here's where you can turn on a meet link. So you can generate a meet link, and then when you're trying to have a meet with students, especially like if you have a virtual happening, this is where you can hide it, turn it on and turn it off so students can see it or not. If you are going to meet with students, I would definitely use this meet link that is generated. I liked turning it off after each class. It is an extra step. Google has transformed a lot this last year, and they have changed a bunch of the privacy types of things with it. so that like once the teacher leaves, it makes it, or it's supposed to make it, that students can't get back on. I don't know. I don't want to make, we were having issues with students meeting on their own meets. Not, I mean, they were finding ways around the system. Students are wonderful, but then we can't monitor what's happening on those meets. So that was becoming a problem. I didn't want that to be a problem in my class, so I just turned the link off, and that seemed to solve the problems. I didn't have any to start with, but it just prevented them. Grade calculation. I would 100% not calculate the overall grade, especially if you're going to have categories. Yes, you can add grade categories here, but then you need to change your Google Classroom each time you have a new quarter. Otherwise, so I just had one Google Classroom for the whole year. That means it would be calculating the grade over the entire year, not just one category. Or just one quarter. It'd be all 4 quarters. If I was doing it by category, then it's kind of mixing and mingling. I would not use Google Classroom for grade calculation if you are going to use Infinite Campus. Now, if you do not have Infinite Campus in any way, shape, or form, or you don't have any sort of a student information system, this might be a good option. But if you're already using something like Infinite Campus, do not have Google calculate the grades. Use Google to communicate with students, to send out assignments, to grade the assignments, and give the assignments a grade. Basically, it's your grade book. Your paper grade book becomes Google Classroom. And Infinite Campus is then where all the grades get calculated out. Once you've made those changes, click Save, and off you go. There are a few other settings that I have mentioned on here, and some of these other ones are kind of our general settings. So if you go, and this is like Google Classroom as a whole, not just Hacking Class. If you go to the bottom here, and it looks like I need to move my little toolbar, it says Settings. This is where you can change, if you want to like, this is just like the typical Google stuff, if you want to be changing that. If you want to get email notifications, word to the wise, you can get a little notification heavy if you're not kind of paying attention to this. But sometimes, I mean, it's easy enough to delete an email. If you get an email, then you can see like, okay, hey, I need to pay attention to this. Or you can see, oh, it's fine, I can just delete it, but at least you're being notified. If it gets to be too much, turn them off. Students sometimes get overwhelmed with all the notifications they get because they'll get a notification that there's a new assignment posted, the new assignment's due, that assignment's now missing, that assignment has a grade, that assignment has a comment. So you might want to show students how they can turn off certain notifications so that they do see stuff. And that means these are email notifications. They'll still get notifications on Google Classroom. So I usually leave my email notifications on. I usually leave the comments on my posts, private comments on each work, because if I am in any way going to leave open what's on the stream or where students can comment back and forth, I might want to be able to keep an eye on that. I could turn these off because I usually turn those features off within each class, but I just leave them on so I am aware of what's happening in case I forget. Classes I'm enrolled in, am I going to get a notification about work and other posts from teachers? Am I going to get a notification for any returned work and grades, invitations to join classes, due date, reminders? This is where you might need to scale back on some of these for some students if that's going to be too many. Classes you teach. So do you want a submission if there's a late submission, if there's a resubmission, if there's an invitation to co-teach, if there's a scheduled post published or failed? I like to leave these things on because I can delete an email easy enough. If it's too much, change until it makes sense to you. There's also, you can turn on notifications for specific classes. So if you're like, well, I want to still be getting notifications from these, turn them on. If you don't want them, turn them off. But that's just where you can kind of see where those are at. Some other things to note, here's where there's a calendar. If students want to be able to see what is coming due and when some of that is due, it's just kind of nice. And a lot of times students live off of this to do. And this is what tells you like, hey, this is their assignments coming up. what's due. And this is why you want to assign things a grade and have things as an assignment, because if it's material, it won't show up in this to do. And they can even look at it by missing or what's done. So that is pretty much Google Classroom kind of wrapped up. I do want to show you, I have it on here, just a few other thoughts of how to post, some different assignments, where you might get information for those. So some other types of assignments you might teach. Now, every site you go to is going to be a little bit different. Typically, you do need to set up your classes by importing a class list. So you want to make sure your Google Classroom is made and then import that class. Edpuzzle is an absolute favorite because it just works with Google Classroom. You can assign a video through Google Classroom, and Edpuzzles, if you haven't worked with them, you can put questions on a video. It does take a little bit of time to make, but as students watch that video, it's more active learning that they're doing. You will see sometimes if the video is taken down by YouTube, then you lost that. So like this one here, this Making Stuff Safer Part 2 is now gone. But let's say I want to use this, how to prepare a model rocket for flight. I can click the check. Now I need to be able to see this down here. I can assign the video, edit the assigned video, move it to folders. So if I'm looking just at the assigning piece right now, I can click that. I would click which classes I wanted to go to. Now I've already imported these classes because this is my last year into Infinite Campus. This is where I can put a start date. This is where I can put a due date. I can say they cannot skip ahead. I can turn on closed captioning if it's there. I usually like to, just in case it's hard to hear. I mean, if the option is there that they can show it, it's not necessarily a bad thing. And then if I have like my first and second hour selected, I can turn it so it posts to Google Classroom immediately. A little heads up, a little note, it doesn't have to post to Google Classroom immediately. I can make my start date in the future, and then it'll schedule. My due date, I would be careful. Yes, you might want it due on, so like I don't want it to start until the 18th, and I'll click save, and I want it done on the 18th. However, if I do that, students cannot finish this after the 18th. It ends, nothing more. So what I usually like to do is I usually like to put whatever the end date of that unit is. So let's say this unit's going to be a week long. Then after I post it, I go into Google Classroom and I change the due date on just that assignment. So when we were like in the hacking class presentations, it would show up up here, so I could put it into a new topic, and I would just go in and edit it a lot like this. It would look exactly like this. It would just be scheduled, and I would just make the due date different on Google Classroom, because Google Classroom will just say, hey, your teacher wanted it due by now. Edpuzzle's last end of due date is like, hey, we're done. You can't watch it after this time. So, and then you can add more instructions, change the title if you want, all of that good stuff. But I would really, Google Classroom, if you have it out of say 5 points, Google Classroom will already like import the grades for you. I know, it's wonderful. Google Classroom is tops, or Edpuzzle, I'm sorry, is tops, because it'll import if out of 5. So that's a really nice one to use. I'll get rid of that one so that we're done with that. Now, other ones that we have, there is one called Quiz-Is. So when you're going to use a Quiz-Is, so it looks a little bit like this, you can explore and look for some. I do have some on here already that you can see me or some of my fabulous codes that I have also made. When you go to use these, you will go to click on this. Now, Quiz-Is, if you haven't heard of it, is a lot like a Quizlet, but you can assign it and it can get graded then. So I can do it as a live quiz with class, or I can assign it with homework. Now, there is a paid versus free version of this, so you can only let it get scheduled out so far, but you can change information as you like. So wherever you see this little like power, that's how you get the pro version. But you can change a lot of this, and then you can send this out. It's basically a Quizlet that is graded, because Quizlet's not graded. Quizlet is fantastic for reviewing, but it's not graded. And there's no way for it to generate a report. So this is where you can change things about like how many attempts they can have, if it shows the actual answer or not. So there's other bits that go with this, but it's where you go into the advanced settings here. And in the advanced, assign to the class. Those are the advanced settings. When you hit select, you can choose which ones it all goes to. You can give it its assignment name. We'll go 13 colonies. And then you can schedule it and the description. So I usually picked a custom time and date. This is just like Edpuzzle, that whatever date you put as it being due is the last day and time that students can play it. So even if you're going to schedule this out, if you want it on the 18th, if you want it done on the 18th, schedule it for the 18th, but put a date that's farther out. So if a student doesn't do it that day, they can go back and still get that learning. Because they might have been absent. There might have been a reason. Maybe they just didn't come to school. We don't know what some of those reasons are sometimes, but we don't want to deprive that opportunity of learning. You could just make a new code, but then that's just more work on you. Quizzes does translate its grades or send its grades to Google Classroom, but it typically doesn't do it very nicely. So if you want the assignment to be out of 5 points, but a student got an 80%, it sends the 80 out of 2. So you just need to go back and double check that if you're going to do a quizzes. So let's close quizzes. Our next one that we have then is Nearpod. Nearpods are really nice. It's kind of like an interactive Google slideshow of sorts. Now you can do this live, just like you could with quizzes, or you can do student paced. And I usually send it out as student paced and then pull up the live mode for class. But then if a student needs to work on this outside of class, it's available to them. You can change the date. And again, there's different amounts of times that you can go out to. And again, send this for the date, like the last time that you want them. Usually I put the day of the test as the last time they can work on this assignment. Because once the test is passed, I want them to work on the next unit. You might want to schedule or require student responses and prevent skipping. This does have the Google Classroom. It's not going to give you any link that's more special, though, than just copying the link. So usually if I'm making an Edpuzzle, I just use the link, copy the link, and then when I go to create a post, I just add the link myself. Because Nearpod's awesome, but its grade doesn't translate because the reports, Nearpod's not like you got a 96 out of 100, because there's some free response ones. There's some that are like a little gamey. There's some that are like video responses. So you have to go into the reports of Nearpod yourself. But then there's the Nearpod. Just make sure you put a due date. That's when you want students. Here I might put like, hey, we're doing this in class the 18th. I want it done this day by 3:30. But on the Nearpod side, I might say, okay, well, the latest I will take it is, so it's going to be June 18th. We'll go like June 9th, June 18th. Oops. So I can change the date there. The next one that I have then, I'll leave that up, is Kahoot. What? Surprise. This is one. Kahoot has an option that students can complete this at their own pace. So I've logged into Kahoot, and when I get here, so this was our Civil War review. Now when you click play, you can do teach, and that's the live version, or you can click assign. And here again, you can put what date you want this to be done by. So with the Nearpod, it just starts the day that you start it, but then you are the one that chooses the due date that kids are going to see on Google Classroom, even though you make the date longer on Nearpod. Kahoot's the same thing. So you're going to put the date you actually want it. So if we've been saying Friday the 18th, but the test is on the 25th, I'll put that. Maybe I'll leave some of these, I'll change them if I want. click create, and it's just giving you a link, a lot like Nearpod. So I'll just copy this URL and go link. Kahoot does not export grades into Google Classroom in any way. So just copying and pasting the pin, or not the pin, the URL is more than fine. But Kahoot, that's pretty wonderful that students can go, they can play the Kahoot independently on their own. A lot of times if we've played it in class, I have students that are like, can I just play it again just for practice? And that's fine. Usually for things like the quizzes or for the Kahoot, I usually say like, I'm looking that they're getting at least an 80%, or maybe I might change the amount on it. But if they're earning like a 12%, they need to go back through that and maybe review that assignment. I mean, you could use the Kahoot or the quizzes. You could use them as like a check after they've read something. You could use it as a review. We've used it and just made each question longer, more on the quizzes, not the Kahoot. But as they go through an assignment that like, there was one of the Declaration of Independence, and I think we put like a few minutes for each question so that students could go through and look through the Declaration of Independence and find that bit of information, because we didn't really care about the time part. We just wanted like, hey, it's a little more interactive, just kind of an interesting way to learn. So it's not the same every day. So the next one I have might be one you have or have not heard of. It's TeacherMade. Now, all of these that I'm showing you, I have used multiple times with students, and they work well. TeacherMade. This is going to be a lot like Kahoot and Nearpod, in that you're going to get a link and then just add it to its own post yourself. So when you get to TeacherMade, so remember how I said Kami, if you can't get Kami, if you can't find a code to make it free or cheaper for you to use Kami, TeacherMade. So you need to have your assignment as made into a PDF, and then you can create a worksheet and then go through, add that PDF, add little text boxes and multiple choice and whatever else you'd like. And then you can just have students add text as if like they're writing on a piece of paper, which is kind of nice. I like it for the multiple choice feature or the checkbox feature. So it's kind of a hybrid between like a paper and like a Google form, like a piece of paper assignment and a Google form, which is kind of nice. Again, it just kind of mixes things up. So it's not the same old every day. Now, when you're ready to go, then you just go into your folders, find that assignment you want to use. So here's one, Rock and Rolling Along. You can create the assignment. After you've created the assignment, you cannot edit the content though. So if you're going through it and you're like, oops, I missed that or I messed that up, it kind of is just done. TeacherMade's a little bit newer, and they've gotten like things have been changing quickly on it, and it's gotten better quicker and quicker. But there are like, once you've made it, you can't go back and like change it. So when I click create the assignment, I can change the name. How do I want it to be delivered? If I have the pro version, go ahead, use Google Classroom. All it's going to do is just give you a link. So TeacherMade is more than fine. How will the student sign in? Use their Google account. How should this score be displayed? I usually like to put like the points earned out of points possible and their score, just because then they kind of see like, okay, I got this out of this, but it gives me this grade, and then they can look on my chart and see like, oh, I got an 80%, or hey, that was an A, or they can kind of see that bit. What information did they see when they turn in their work? So if you're going to release the scores when you return the work, possible, I like to just let them see what's going on right away. I usually go for the score on individual items, so then they can see, yes, I got this right, or no, I got this wrong. Honestly, with all of these bits of technology that we're using, if students get instant feedback, they're going to be more invested in what they're learning, or more willing to do or engage in that learning, because they can see how they did immediately. They want that like quick feedback. And what information does the student see when the work is returned? I would put the score and correct answers on individual items. I'd probably just go to score on individual items. So they see, yes, they got it right. No, they didn't get it right. Go to next, create the assignment, choose the things you want students to have to be able to do so they can create their own text boxes, draw on the worksheet. So I don't have a pro account, at least not now. So I'll just unclick those, click save, and then here is the link that you need. Copy that to your clipboard, and this is where I had the Kahoot before. Now it's a teacher made. Where you could use Google Classroom to share it, but it's basically just, it's going to put a link on Google Classroom, so it's not really that much very useful. What the teacher made does look like, so if you wanted to see what one of these looks like, I can preview this worksheet. So this is what this one ended up looking like. So there's a place for them to put their name in. I think actually Mrs. Jenny Carbellini has a video thing here. We were able to add links, and then as they go along, there's little text drop downs, and then this will self-grade. So this was a PDF that we had. I mean, it's one of those things that it is, is a paper copy going to be better than the digital copy? Is the digital copy really elevating what they're learning? This is a review of something that they do in 6th grade for science, which is the rock cycle. So by the time they get to 8th grade, they already know about it. We just want like a one and done kind of day, just quick review. We want them to be able to see if they got the information. So it makes sense for this one. Is it going to be good for all of them? Maybe, maybe not, but it's nice. It gives them a quick grades it themselves, and then you can get the answer or get the grades and keep going. So teacher made, I'd highly recommend. Quizlet. Now getting into Quizlet, Quizlet does not have a grade associated with it in any way, shape, or form. What Quizlet is fantastic for is review or studying. So Quizlet, I would highly recommend you use Quizlet, but know that you cannot grade it in any way, shape, or form. The only way you can kind of grade it is if you do like a Quizlet live and it's just going to be whoever wins first. I don't know if that's going to be your number one way. I mean, more like if they're participating in the review process, but there's no like reporting in Quizlet. It's just review. So let's say I'm going to use this Chapter 2 Forces in Motion, which is one we use every year actually. And so then students can use the flashcards, they'll learn, they can use the test feature, the match feature, Gravity Live. So it makes it more fun. The Quizlet Live, that's fun to use in class because it gets the students kind of playing against each other. How to share this is you're looking for this little kind of half box with an arrow. And when you click on it, here is the link you need. Again, where it says share on Google Classroom is literally just going to be the website making you a post and copying and pasting the link. So I just like to just do it myself. I mean, then I can see the exact type of assignment I want, and I'm going to change a bunch of things anyways. So there's Quizlet. Super easy, nice to get to, and it's a good review to have if there's a test that you have coming up. The last one that I have is the Google Form, if you have a Google Form assignment. So maybe this is a test. Maybe this is going to be, you have a bunch of videos, like chunks of videos. So remember Edpuzzle, I said you could add questions to the videos, but maybe you have a series of like 1 or 2 3-minute videos, and then you have a few questions that go with it. I know in a year past, we had like a few different battles of the Civil War, and it's, collectively, it's going to be a whole lesson, but one by one, it's like, oh, here's a 2-minute video for the entirety of class. So if you put them all in the Google form, everything's all right there. You can make it so it self-grades. You can make it so that there's like a validation response, or they have to type in the exact wording. Some things to consider is if you want, you can have this as a locked test. The only thing is it has to be controlled by you have to have devices that are controlled by like a district or something. So in Portage, we have like all of our devices are controlled, so to speak. So we're able to do that. If you don't, then you can't have the locked mode. But that is something to consider. If you do have a modified assignment or something for a student. So let's use my cat Miko again as the person that's needing my modified assignments. This is where you might not want to lock it, because if Miko needs the test read to him and there's not someone who can sit directly next to him, they need to pull it up on another screen, they can't see it at the same time. So be cautious of how you're locking it, especially if you have a student who has different needs, like maybe vision, so someone's going to help read it to them. Maybe they needed a modified assignment and it's going to be read to them. Maybe it is some other something that they're going to need to be able to share their screen, so you might need to make a copy. Once you've made your assignment though, and little heads up, always make sure you have students' names, and under the settings, always collect emails. If you don't collect the emails and they don't put their name, you're kind of out of luck. How to share this with students then? Do not go add collaborators. You are going to be sending the form to the students as if they could edit it. Have I done this? Yes. Was it a fail? 100%. You want to go to where it says send, and you can send it via email. So if I have a student that needs to take this late, they missed the testing period, I might make a late copy and send it directly to them. But if it's going on Google Classroom, I just use the link here, copy it, and I send it to paste it, and there is the Google Classroom. It's a form then. That's how you could attempt to go about the quiz assignment if you wanted. I don't know. I've had more glitchy experiences with the quiz assignment than I have had successful with that. So those are kind of the big favorites that I have of assignments to use. There is, if you need to add an outside assignment, maybe it's a paper assignment. Maybe it is a student needs to take a picture of an Earth Day project they did, like taking cans to a recycle center or something like that. Paper assignments like scanning them in, maybe just have them take a picture and add that to Google Classroom. They can do that, especially if they have the app on their phone or if their parents have the app on their phone. That works really well. They can take pictures with their Chromebook. That would work. The best, though, if you are having students take and turn in paper assignments, have them use some sort of camera to take those pictures. If they're using a Chromebook, it's going to be grainy and it's going to be hard to see. I do have 2 videos, so submitting paper assignments with an iPhone or with an Android. I do have the links there too if you'd want to copy them to use them. And it's kind of using your camera, but in an elevated way, so that when you need to see them as a teacher, you can actually read what's written. And if students need to access them, they can see what is written. So there's a few ways to go about that. I have those linked here. Honestly, we just showed it to our students during class. They're kind of some interesting ways. So just some last little bits, thoughts. A Meet link. Use the Meet link that's on Google Classroom. It's already been done, kind of to make sure that ending the Meet is more successful and students aren't able to get back on. Even after we might not have as many virtual classes, you might still consider opening up the Meet. Something that we've noticed, or I noticed in my class, is my classroom's kind of long. And like the students, especially trying to keep them distance, they were farther back in the room. And in my first 5 years of teaching, I just kind of would strategically put different students in different spots in my room. But I had a number of students who they're like, hey, the Meet's open for people at home. Why don't I just join it, and whatever's on the board, I can see, right? And I'm like, nice thinking. In fact, I use a dock cam most of the time because my smartboard is a touchless touch TV. It's gorgeous and so much better than the smartboard I had, so I am ecstatic. And I'm used to using my dock cam. But if that is showing up on your screen that you're recording, it will show up on their screen in the Meet, even though they're in your class. If you're writing on your smart TV or smartboard of any sort, and it would be showing up on your screen in a Google Meet, they will see it too. So now they have the front of the classroom right in front of their face. Unmirror your screens. If you're presenting to a smartboard or interactive TV, you can have two screens. Have your lesson on the smartboard or the smart TV, and then have your computer screen with the students who are on the meet. So then you don't need extra devices happening all at once. To do that, you need to go into the main settings under display, and then you'll click mirror screens or not. That's at least for a Mac. You may need to change that a little bit different if you are someone not using a Mac computer, but I would definitely recommend it because then you've got two screens going. It's a little bit to get used to at first, but then it's really nice. You just pick up and drag the tab. So if like this is the one I want on my other screen, I just pick it up, drag it over. I don't have it hooked up to my smart TV right now. And then I could have the students that left here. And then in the Meet, use what you have. There's the raise hand button, so students can kind of vote or choose sides or opinions or options. It's real informal polling. And make sure you give some wait time because, it's technology. It's not instant, but it's close. So they might need a second to hear the information, think about it, and then raise their hand. But you can do a little bit of polling. If we were doing a true-false question, I'd be like, raise your hand if this one's true. Raise your hand if this one's false. Get students a little more involved. Use the chat to help gather ideas or questions. It's, again, super informal, but it's there. I mean, you could even have all of your students that are even in class live with you and at home all responding all at once. It's informal, but it's possible. Please let me know if you have any questions. I know there's a lot of information that was covered. You can go back and watch this video as many times as you'd like and get as much information as you would like. Have a great day and best of luck with your school year. Bye.